Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Don't Call Me Skinny. I am so excited to be bringing you a bunch of new people on, new interviews, lots of different perspectives. And today I'm super excited to have Jillian Harbarcuk. Yes, I got it. Okay.
You did it.
And she is CEO and founder of Fueled. And we are here today to talk about some kind of myths in this functional medicine space, and to talk about the basics and why they're so important. We're going to get into some fun stuff. But first, Jillian, why don't you go ahead and talk about who you are, where you came from, and how you got into this world?
Yeah, so I, going all the way back, was pregnant right around the age of 21. And historically prior to that, I mean, I was definitely like an athlete. I played soccer, I ran cross country in high school, but I was not healthy. I did just very typical like dieting things in my early 20s, typical college kid, drank, didn't eat, nutrition was poor, lots of fast food. And then when I got pregnant, I gained a lot of weight really, really quickly. And I think that was, I think sometimes in the first pregnancy, we kind of like give ourselves a pass, like, it's okay, I'm pregnant. And then after that, I was like, who is this person? Who is this body? Like, I had to find this whole new version of myself. I gained almost 70 pounds in my pregnancy, and I was like, what am I doing? So insert bodybuilding. I went to a gym, signed up with a trainer. He was in the bodybuilding world, and just kind of like opened up from there. And that is unfortunately what my stepping stone into like the fitness industry was, which the evolution has been beautiful and I'm in a good place now, but it was definitely a journey. It was its own version of like restrictive eating. And I became like a certified personal trainer back in 2014 and had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but I found this thing that I loved. And I was like, this would be really cool to like help other people do this. And now it's obviously 2025 and it's definitely a different way of helping people. And I know that we're super aligned in kind of the basics and how we approach just like health and wellness and fitness for women and individuals in general. So yeah, now I coach. I have a team of coaches and we just help women stop with the dieting fads and the restriction and all of the craziness that swirls around, especially this time of year. So yeah, just coaching and helping as many people as I can at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing we kind of talked about was the bodybuilding scene. So that's obviously not my world, like at all. I would love to hear, some people don't have any idea anything about the restrictiveness and the discipline required. Can you go into a little bit about like what is required when we talk about, and we're talking about stage. So if you've ever heard me say, because I say it all the time, you use stage lean or things like that, that's like that bodybuilding space. Can you just talk a little bit about what that world and space is like?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Crazy.
Honestly, like I dove in head first, and I'm very much a person that like when I do it, I'm like full send, totally invested. I want to be the best. I want to do all of the things. And that became toxic, which I think is, again, just like its own version of dieting, right? The way that we get sucked into these things. But yeah, essentially it's competing for a certain level of physique, right? There's different categories and it's like, how lean are you? How good is your posing? And I thought that was healthy and fit, right? I thought that being leaner meant I was healthier and in better shape. And it was just a really warped mindset. I remember I tell this story on other podcasts, but I had a meal plan that was 900 calories a day. And I remember a very specific moment where I was eating a green pepper at work one day on my lunch break, like an apple. And I was so dizzy. I couldn't focus. I had so much brain fog that I had to leave work that day because I was just restricting so much. And ironically, that was not my wake up call moment. I kept competing, but I started to wake up a little bit and realize like, this probably isn't good. I didn't have a cycle for 2 years. But I didn't care. I was like, this is fine. This is normal. Right. And, I went to compete in a national show in Las Vegas, and I was really getting into more frequent binge eating where I was like, very typical Monday through Friday, sometimes Monday through Wednesday, hitting my diet, all out binge to the point where I couldn't even move, and then restricting or doing extra cardio. And I didn't realize, I'm like, this is actually like a disorder. This is a problem. And about 2 weeks before that national show, I woke up and I was like, I'm done. This is not for me. I can't live like this anymore. I ended up gaining rebound weight, about 30 pounds back really quickly. And it took me a long time to not only recover like health and hormones, but like mentally, I didn't know what, putting this in air quotes, but like a normal body should look like, or what normal fitness was, because all I knew was 2 hours a day, 7 days a week in the gym, and 10,000 steps, and carrying a gallon of water with me, and not eating out at restaurants. Like, it was so disordered, and I didn't know. And it took a good like 2 to 3 years from like early 2016 to recover from that. So it was wild for sure. 0 out of 10, don't recommend.
-2 out of 10, don't recommend.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this question, and you can decline to answer, but I'm just curious because we focus a lot, obviously, on the basics, and I work with a lot of women who are in that same similar potential restrict and binge cycle. And when you hear her say 900 calories, okay, she's in the gym 7 days a week. Can you tell me how much you weighed at 900 calories and you're eating 900 calories?
I mean, I was like somewhere around 115, I think, on stage, but I'm 5'6". Like, that is like, I felt good and all of these things and lean. And the moment when I look back at pictures during that time of my life, people, like, my husband looks back, he didn't know that version of me, but he's like, you look sick. Like, it doesn't look okay.
Right.
And I don't look healthy at all, but, visibly doesn't even scratch the surface of how sick and disordered I actually was, right? Like, you would look and be like, wow, she looks great. She looks happy. She's smiling. And I was miserable. I was way less confident being that lean than I am now, because I just was so unhealthy. And so I judged myself. I judged everyone around me in the way that they ate. And I didn't know at the time that there was a life where you just eat food because you need to live and fuel your body and feel good. And that it doesn't have to be this constant battle in your head around every calorie that you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived that way for a really long time.
Yeah. So like 2 things I want to really point out is the reason I asked you that question is because we think that a lot of women that come to me, they're thinking that they're only eating 900 calories a day or 1,000 calories or 1,200 calories. And you can see at 5'6", which is the same height I am, how lean she really was, eating 900 calories. What was happening to her? If you are consistently under eating like that, minus what we're doing to our overall health, right? You're going to feel nauseous, brain fog, inability to like function appropriately. You're going to get dizzy. You're going to get all these things that she was talking about, which is why it's not a healthy recommended thing to do. And some of the programs today do have you eating in this wonderful calorie deficit of 1,000 calories. But the other thing I want to point out is something that I actually wrote down before we started talking, like before we were recording, and then you said something again, and it's defining like this not healthy, like what I thought was healthy versus what is actually healthy, right? Being skinny is this version that obviously means we're healthy. That's what that means. If we're overweight, we're unhealthy. If we're skinny, we are healthy. And so I want to talk a little bit about this part, because a lot of people think not only being leaner is healthier, but it's also means that you're happier. Right. And I feel like that the lower that we go on the scale, the number goes down, and we feel like we're doing all the things right. We feel like we getting our worth from that, our value from the number on the scale, when really it's kind of the side effect of fixing the other pieces of our life. That why are we actually unhealthy? Is not the Oreos are not what make us unhealthy. It's like, why do we turn to the whole sleeve of Oreos to begin with? So I'm curious about what you classify as healthy. Like when you look at somebody now and out of your own journey, like what is that definition, if you will, of health?
Yeah. So I think that part of the problem in this industry is that we look at everything as so black and white. Like we look at, I need to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight, and it has to be 1,200, right? Like that's this like weird blanket number that surfaced one day and never went away. My clients use my fitness pal to track their macros, but it's still, you put in, you want to lose 2 pounds a week, and it says, 1,200, no matter what size, no matter what, any other data you put in. And it's like, it doesn't have to be black and white. And then I think, like you said, we associate being skinnier or smaller with being healthier. And again, we're looking at that as like black and white. Like, yes, there are people that will be healthier if they lose weight, but it's not black and white. It's not that you aren't healthy if you don't lose more weight. Like, I was a level of leanness that some people looked at me and came to me to achieve that isn't actually sustained. I mean, I didn't have a cycle because my body fat percentage was so low. It was too low for an adult female to carry long term, and my body paid the price for that. And I mean, obviously going further into my journey, I definitely can talk about like how that disordered eating kind of evolved and changed my health in a negative way still. But I think that health to me now is like same thing with like body positivity. Like you can love where you're at and still work on yourself. And I think it's always a work in progress, that living a healthy and fit life there's no like end date. Like I wake up and I work out, a healthy amount, but I also spend time with my family, and I do eat socially, and I do indulge sometimes, but I also get tons of nutrients, and I make sure my body gets what it needs, and I'm here to thrive and not survive. Right. And I think that, so many women, especially like moms, put themselves on the back burner because we have X, Y, and Z to do, and we're so busy. And when are you going to take care of yourself? And I think you have to prioritize yourself to some degree over everything else in your life, and have a balance with that. And of course, like the word balance, I feel like is so taboo because like what really is that, it's different for everyone. But I think having a good balance of like being present and living life and actually feeling good to show up as a mom, as a spouse, as a friend in your career, like you should feel good and healthy and energized and confident and sleep well. And yeah, we're all a little bit stressed, but I think being able to tolerate those stressors and have that presence in your life and not view food as this toxic thing. Like people, there are addicts, right? That like they just cut off the thing and have to avoid it. Like a bad relationship with food is the hardest thing because you can't just not eat, right? So like you have to learn to heal that relationship with food and understand all of the benefits and the things that it can provide you, if you treat your body with respect. So I think health is like so encompassing of like mental and physical and spiritual and social, right? There's so many components to it, truly.
I agree. Whenever I talk about #balance, I go #balance because I really don't feel like if you're balanced, then it's like everything is status quo. Typically, if we're focusing on social, right, our food might dip a little bit because we're focusing on social. Like we just had holidays, right? So it's like, okay, who here was more focused on like what we were doing versus like paying attention to the food we were eating? I know I was. I was just going to take my day and enjoy it. And that doesn't mean I get to, bathe in, the desserts or anything, but I am going to pay a little less attention to certain things than I would normally on an everyday basis. So I think it's like having that, I agree. Like, I don't believe in quote unquote balance because something's always going to be off kilter. Something's always going to be shifted a little bit to compensate for this other thing that you're focusing on. And then the other thing, the busy, I don't have time. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I just had a conversation with somebody about this, and it's like, we think it's selfish to take care of ourselves. We think it's selfish. I'm saying this air quotes, selfish to go to the gym or to make sure we're taking time to meal prep, right? I actually think it's selfish to not get the help that you need when you need it. You are doing a disservice to your family. You're doing a disservice to children if you have them. And maybe even other people in your life who you might inspire to change their life as well. It's a disservice to them. And it's quite selfish to think that you don't have the time to do the things that you need to do. Because I think we spend a lot of time overthinking, overdoing, and not taking action. And that time and that space that we spend doing those things are wasted because we're like, well, I really need to get this done. Well, I really should be meal prepping. Wow, I'm such a piece of crap for not doing that. Or gosh, how could I have eaten those donuts at work today? Like, oh my God, like all these things instead of just like doing something. We could take the energy that we're focusing on wanting to do it and just fucking execute.
Yeah, I love how you describe that too, of like it's selfish not to do it because we say those things like, I don't have time or I have all these things to do, but then you complain that you're irritable with your kids or you cry in bed at night because you were so mean to them and you're like, I feel guilty, or your spouse, like you're not giving them the time that they deserve, or your marriage the attention it needs. And it's like, you aren't showing up as the best version of yourself for them. by not taking care of yourself. And it was a hard lesson that I learned back in like 2021. I was like all in, like I said, I'm very all in, almost to in like a toxic way to like work and everything that I do. And I stopped working out. I stopped eating. It just wasn't intentional. I just was working a lot of hours, and I ended up being diagnosed with Hashimoto's and having to go through a pretty intense functional protocol to get back to like a healthy place, and doing yoga and learning how to slow down. And I was very much the person that's like, I don't know how to meditate. I can't. And I always say that if you feel like meditation or yoga is hard or boring or you can't focus, it's because you need it more than anybody else. And we need to know how to slow down and take time for ourselves. And I just had this conversation this morning with a client of like, you can't afford not to take that time for yourself. Like you're complaining about all these other things, but they'll get better if you just take a little bit of time for you. And it feels counterproductive, but you're going to be more productive and you're going to be more efficient when you feel good. And yeah, it's hard to like make that shift at first, but what other option do you have?
Yeah, I think the other option is waiting until you're forced. And then what do? Then you're pissed off because, oh, why didn't I do something sooner? Out of a hole. Yeah. It's like, why didn't I do something sooner? I really needed to change. And then it's just more putting yourself, like you said, in this hole. And it's so hard to get out of that space, especially when you don't have support, especially when you refuse to hire a coach, or you just not even a coach, like just invest in something, like anything, to help keep you accountable to those things. Like a lot of times people don't hire coaches. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't find myself telling all these people what they need to be doing. I tell these people, hey, let's pause that for right now. Hey, and you hit the nail on the head when it's like, if you can't slow down, this is me. It is like, it takes everything. It's like, pretend you have cement in your feet. Just sit there and get over the fact that it's uncomfortable. Get over the fact that you have 47 other things that you should be doing right now, and just stop. And it's like, that is so difficult for me. It's something that I'm working on right now, because I could just go from 6 a.m. and just plow right through till 9 p.m. And it's like, I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. I didn't even feel like I did anything today and all these things. And then it's like, why don't I feel that way? Like, I got my 1,000 checklist thing that I have, tick, 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 tick. And it's like, just slow down. If you're a person that cannot slow down, there's a reason why you can't slow down. Typically trauma at some point. I know growing up for me, I was lazy. If you're not up, you're lazy. If you're not getting your stuff done, you're lazy. So I'm really trying to work on that myself, and also not take that and tell my kids, you should always be doing something. Why aren't your chores done? Why aren't this is done? Blah, 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 blah. It's like, I don't want them to fall in the same trap as I do. I want them to be able to like chill. Like, that's part of life, is like slowing down. We don't realize that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's like the most common trap that I see is we all have a to-do list. Like, we all have things that need to be done, that should be done today, that won't get done until next week or next month, whatever. Like, it's just the way that it goes. And you can't, my experience in 2021 was that I did go to the point of like, almost can't function anymore. I mean, I couldn't sleep I was up all night. I was tossing and turning, and then I was exhausted all day and filling the void with caffeine and Adderall and all of these other Band-Aids. And it's like, I just wasn't taking care of my body. And then I got to the point of absolute burnout. My cortisol was completely like low, tanked, done. My body was like waving the flag, like, I got nothing left for you. I do have to be careful. And I think I'm sure that's why you can relate too, is I think that's like an entrepreneur thing, is that we just like go and have all these things. But we have to slow down. And meditating and yoga, I was like, oh, this sucks. And now it's like riding a bike. You have to practice and get better. And it's really, it's good to be like in tune with your body and recognize like, oh, I'm shifting a little bit in the wrong direction. I need to dial it back. And, I think that's really what it's about. And I think if you can regulate and be that in tune with your body, you can like take over the world, honestly. If you can regulate your emotions and learn to sit in the discomfort and learn to slow down when it's the hardest, everything else just kind of feels easy from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I work a lot with women on that regulation piece. Again, I'm a big scope of practice, so we do what I can in my scope of practice. And a lot of it is just bringing awareness, right? Sometimes it's like, I'm not supposed to feel this way, or why do I feel this way? Instead of just saying, man, I feel this way. Like, I just am this way today. Like I'm just irritable today. Like I'm just short today. And it's like, it's okay to have these moments, but as long as we can start recognizing like, okay, but when I am short, what is something that I could do now to help myself be a little less short? Like, or why did I get to this place? How, like, can I look back and figure out, oh, I clearly overdid it in this spot right here. Like you were talking about like caffeine and Adderall and just like being an entrepreneur, there's content, there's emails, there's podcast interviews, there's all these things. And it's like, you wear every coaching and you wear every hat. You have a team that you have to manage. Like there's all these different hats that we wear. And then that doesn't even include parenting, right? And other people may experience this, like, you know, in their own job. Maybe they wear multiple hats at their job and then they come home and then they're mom and then they're this person and then their wife and then they're all of the things. Like you have to figure out like, how did I get here, and figuring out, and that's again, hiring a coach to
fill the gap.
That definitely fill the gap. So let's talk about it. So 2021, cortisol's tanked. You end up like waving the white flag. You're like, save me at this point. I got nothing left. One thing I wanted to say about that really fast too, is like, we think that we can just keep going. Eventually the body is going to shut down. The body will stop. The body will say, we're done. And your body did that.
Yeah.
Your body did that.
I think that like, I think that another like black and white, like perspective or just like tunnel vision a little bit of like, it's with dieting or it's with stressors or it's with traumas or it's with all these things where it's like, well, I made it through. Like I did this thing, but I dieted and it worked before, or I didn't, even in the worst moments of my life, I still was good and I still could lose weight at that time. And then we hit this brick wall one day and we're scratching our heads wondering like what changed. And everyone's like, it's age, it's this. And it's like, no, at some point your body does reach a threshold, and mine just had enough. I went through like a really stressful time, you know, like 19 to 2021. And all of a sudden as a coach, I was doing the air quote right things. I couldn't lose weight. I couldn't sleep. All these weird things were happening that I didn't recognize in myself. And my body had enough. It could not keep up. It could not sustain any longer. And I think when we're in like true fight or flight, yeah, your body's doing what it can to survive. But like once I got to a point where like life slowed down again and I addressed some things, it was like I joke, but not joke with my therapist that like I felt like all my trauma was just like coming out of my pores. Like it was like my body was like overfilled. I was like, you got to address something. I've had enough. And that was really where I had to take a step back and decide like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing to my body? Like, and it does make you look back and really appreciate like, wow, my body carried me through some really crazy shit that I went through. And now that life is like slow and calm, it's okay to like have to survive things like that you experience. But then I went through, you know, Hashimoto's, like I said, my thyroid was going from hyper to hypo in a matter of 2 months. And I was so puffy. I bloated after all my meals. I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning every night. I wasn't eating all day. My food choices and food quality were just so poor. Didn't have time to work out, right? Like I stopped lifting. I stopped doing all of the things that made me feel good. And then I wondered why I didn't feel good. And I had to slow down and step back. And I, you know, went through what a lot of people do, going to the doctor, your labs are normal, everything's fine, keep going. And I'm like, something is really, really wrong here. I ended up finding, who's a dear friend now, a functional practitioner online. And I was like, please help me. Like, if you do whatever it is that you do, right? I didn't understand the space at the time. And I was like, if you do whatever you do and you think I'm normal, I will accept it. I will accept that this is how bad I'm supposed to feel in my life, and I'll just deal with it. And it was so validating to hear like, whoa, something is really off here, to go like deeper than just surface level. And then when I took all this data that I spent thousands for and presented it to my doctor, they were like, oh, wow, we really need to look into this. And I'm like, come on, like, why did I have to jump through these hoops and was like, felt gaslit for years, like something was crazy. And anyway, so that took me down the diagnosis of Hashimoto's, really taking time to like go deeper. I'm like, I don't want medication. I want to know, like, I did this to my body. I should be able to correct it. I added lots of meditation and yoga and breath work and took some time off of lifting and really just like got to know myself again. So it's just like a whole different version of like the bodybuilding crash that I went through. And that's okay because I think that is part of my story and part of how I can show up for the women that I do and coach, is to have gone through that personally. So yeah, that functional space is a whole nother rabbit hole, I feel like.
Yeah. We're about ready to dive in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. So, I talk a lot about like, focusing on the basics of health, and that if you go to these, I was in a group of coaches, there were some functional coaches in there, and I'm listening to these protocols and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, if people can't even drink water, like how are they going to be able to like literally like do these protocols? Like it's wild. And even went to so far as pairing with a coach, and my first client that I had her go through this stuff, she had IBS, really high anxiety. And we were working through some of those things that I could, like the anxiety piece, and just like understanding and slowing down and understanding the triggers and what are some things that we can do to mitigate those anxieties. But then we got this like slew of supplements that she had to get on. And it was like, eat this then, take this then, four of these then, 30 minutes before eating, 4 minutes after you stand on your head, 6 minutes after you I don't know, go pee in the morning. Like it was just like wild. And I was like, whoa, this is a lot, but this must be needed, right? It must be needed. And then I had another client come in and we did the same things, kind of the same digestive issues, inability to slow down, those kinds of things, busy mom, teacher, those kinds of things. And then I got like basically the same protocol. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not right. Like something's off here. And then I start looking at everything. I'm like, man, I'm overwhelmed by this. And I'm not even the one taking all these supplements. Like this is wild. Like why so many supplements? And so we ended up stopping. So I'm curious, obviously we've chatted a little bit about this, but like, what was your experience in your space? And what do you see happening right now with these supplements that it's like, red flag?
Yeah. So initially, and I think part of the problem with supplements is that so many people are looking for a solution to their problems where they can just check a box and be done and not think about anything, right? So everyone looks for a meal plan. That's why people love programs like Optavia, because it's like, oh, I don't have to think about anything. They tell me what to eat. I just eat this packaged food and all of my problems are solved. And we're like looking for a way to climb the mountain without actually having to climb it. And then you're just climbing the mountain years later and you feel worse and it's even harder, right? Like just climb the fucking mountain. And I think that same thing, it's very black and white. Like when I learned all of this and understood my body and understood why my thyroid was hypo and how I got Hashimoto's and what led to all of that, I really wanted to be, same thing. Like I want to know it all. I want to be the best. I want to like use this and help people. And it's not black and white. Like you don't have to give all of these supplements. And, sometimes women will come to me and they're like, I want to test this and I need this and I need these labs. And even when women come to me, I'm like, listen, if you're a data person and you just want labs as a baseline, I will support you and I'll send you the link right now to buy. However, it doesn't change the fact that you still need to slow down, that you're working out too much, that you're not eating enough, that you need to spend more time meal prepping and planning your food and getting sleep and going to bed and getting off your phone and setting boundaries in your life. Like it doesn't change. No supplement is going to change the fact that you have to do that. But people are always looking for a Band-Aid or something to like fill that gap. And I always use the analogy of like you're putting Band-Aid on like a bullet hole. Like you can't get shot and just slap a Band-Aid on it. Like, yeah, it might hold you through for a little bit, but you're going to have to find a more permanent solution to address this. But you can't put the Band-Aid on and then ask yourself why the Band-Aid's not working. Like, logically why it's not. But we do the same thing with supplements and health, and we're always looking for a shortcut to health. And then, so many people see like influencers and people in the space. And like, I have people come to me and say like, well, you make things look so easy. And I'm like, well, it's because I prioritize those things. It is easy for me to, I always think about eating my protein. I always thinking about, for one, saving money on food, but also like eating more home cooked meals because I want to have control of what's going in my body. And I do prioritize sleep, and I don't drink wine to unwind, right? I recognize when I need to take a step back and slow down and spend more time with my family and be present. And we talked about balance, right? Like I can see when the scale's tipping and when I'm like, oh, it shouldn't be tipping, or we're tipping too far in that direction. I need to pull back. We're always looking for a shortcut or a way around these things. And to be healthy, you have to be healthy. Like you have to make healthy choices and do healthy things. And I think the functional space just throws a supplement at it, and it doesn't change the fact that you have to do all those things. I do take clients through intense protocols when it gets to that point. But if you're not checking the boxes, or I don't think you have the ability to see it through, or you haven't mastered the basics first, none of these is going to be a huge waste of money for you. Like, it's not even worth you putting your energy into it, because you have to address everything else first.
Yeah. So when you talk about the basics, we kind of talked about what my basics are. When you're looking at a client and it's like, okay, first of all, it's cool, I can help you, but we need to address some things before we just start dumping supplements your way. What are things that you're specifically looking to address when you're like, okay, it's cool, you might actually need supplements? And I think there is a time and a place where, like you talked about, like it might get to a point where somebody is so far that they do have to have this protocol. Now, do they have to have everything that my two clients went through? Probably not, if other things are addressed. One of the things, just side note, I would send over some food logs, and it's like, she wouldn't even address like, oh yeah, everything looks good. Really? Like everything? Like there's nothing that you could help in the food part first, or like, hey, let's like also address this piece. Like there's nothing, in either client. And I'm just thinking, okay, so now you're just dumping a bunch of supplements at them, right? So sorry, that was like a little side piece, but like, what are these basics that you're looking for a client to be like, okay, yes, we could go into supplements if we needed to go in that direction, but first we have to address these things.
Yeah. So like every client that comes in, I don't ever start anyone in a functional protocol unless I like personally know this human and we've, maybe I've coached them before, or I know what they've tried, all of those things. But, I talk about reverse dieting a lot within my space. And I tell everyone that comes into our program, I'm like, it's not because I think your metabolism is broken or something is wrong or everyone's metabolism sucks. Reverse dieting isn't just increasing your calories for metabolism. Most adult women, I'm sure you experience this, don't know what eating at maintenance or actually intentionally eating 2,200 calories of nutrient dense foods, right? We associate dieting with I'm tracking 1,200 calories or I'm full on YOLO. Like I ask every woman, when is the last time you intentionally ate over 2,000 calories? And they're like, never, I don't know. And it's like, let's start there, because if you can't do that, you can't diet. You can't do these other things. There's no point. You have no business being in a deficit. You didn't earn that yet. So like, I need to see that you can sleep. I have a client right now. She's been at maintenance for 16 months, and she knows better than to ask to go into a deficit, because she's not in that season of life. She's still, we're hitting our protein, but that took a long time. We're focusing on increasing servings of fruits and veggies every day. She's finally getting a good balance of like movement and steps and sleep in her day. But like, they know, like my clients know when they come to me, you have to master these basics. If you can't consistently hit 2 to 3 workouts a week and you can't hit your protein goal, what's a deficit going to do for you? It's not going to serve the purpose you want it to serve at all. And that applies to these functional protocols too. It's like, you still have to do these things and master these things. Yeah, we can add these supplements, but you still have to walk. You still have to manage your stress. You still have to sleep 8 hours. So sure, do you need something to help regulate your sleep? Great. Your sleep schedule, your circadian rhythm, awesome. Let's add something in. But you better be checking in saying, I'm not using my phone late hours of the night. I'm not scrolling TikTok at 11 p.m. Like, what are your vices and how are you, like, what is your habit? What are your behaviors? What are the behaviors that serve you and don't? You still have to differentiate all of those things too.
Yeah. And that's really what I do. Like these are the things that we focus on. It's like I always say the same thing. You have to earn being in a calorie deficit. You have to earn the right to be in a diet. We just think we're always dieting. I was always on a diet. I was always dieting. Every Monday I started a diet. I swear, every single Monday. Or I would, do the It Works wraps and try to lose my belly fat because it just melted away. I don't even know what I thought. I thought actual fat melted. Like I don't even know. It was wild, right? Back in the day. But and that's not to judge. Like that's what I really thought happened. But it's like understanding like, right now I have one client we just signed on, and it's like, okay, we need to we're still working on logging, and she's just like taking pictures. Like that's where we're at, because that's where she's at in her life. She's not at a place that she can track every macro that she has going in her mouth right now. And she's okay. Well, if you're not in a place to do that, then you're probably not in a place to be in a diet phase yet. Right. So it's like, you have to check boxes. There's specific things that I'm looking for before I'm like, sure, let's start losing weight. Because, and the likelihood too, like I have some clients that think they're in a calorie deficit and they're really not in a calorie deficit. And so once we actually start just tracking food, a lot of my clients end up losing weight just by focusing on more whole foods and, being a little bit more aware how often am I eating that chocolate? Oh, how often am I eating those ice creams? Or how often do I unwind with wine? It's like starting to become a little bit more just aware about what your habits are, about what you are consuming and what you're doing. That this is a huge piece. Like this is like, and that's why I do what I do, because that's how I lost the 80 pounds was I just focused on the simple shit. That isn't always easy. Like you talked about, like how long have you been working on this client just with her sleep and that kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's so individual, right? Like, we talked about this before we came on, but like everyone thinks they're an anomaly. They're busier than everyone else. Everything is harder for them, that they are broken and can't lose fat, that their thyroid is crazier than everyone else's. And, clients are like, but I'm doing this, but I'm doing this. And I'm like, you in your head think you're doing all of these things, but they're not the things that serve the purpose right now, right? Like you're like, but I'm working out 5 days a week. And I'm like, right, but you just told me you sleep 4 hours a night. Like that's not, that's a huge like roadblock and a boulder in your way. So it's so individual, right? Like I, specifically with like coming back to reverse dieting, like I had a client came to me, busy business owner, under eating unintentionally, just didn't realize it. It's just like she normalized it like a lot of women do. And a reverse diet, I tell everyone, people are like, well, how long does it take? I'm like, could be 2 weeks, could be 12 months. I have no idea, right? Like your compliance is a huge variable here. And that's okay, right? Like I'm fine if it takes you 12 months, because if that's the pace that you move to like make a lifestyle change that's going to serve you forever, great. I'm here to support you. But it took her a good 6 or 7 months before we hit maintenance. And she's like, I hit it. I'm ready for fat loss. And I was like, whoa. Like we took one step. We're not on chapter 10 yet. We're on chapter 3. So then we like had to talk through like what maintenance looks like and why, and how she spent all these years eating 1,100 calories and, actually like taking the calories and fueling your body and pairing them with the workouts you've been doing to like build muscle and change your physique now. It's funny too, like she was seeing like inches lost, but like the scale not like super shifting as she went through this reverse diet and maintenance process. And she's like, I want to go into fat loss phase. And I'm like, you're literally losing inches and telling me that your pant size is going down. What? But she's like, we're always like, gotta diet. And I was like, the fact that you're saying this to me tells me we're not quite there yet. Right. So like, it's so individual. And I think that, I hate the word like mindset, because it can feel very like fluffy and woo woo. And sometimes there's mindset coaches that I'm like, we don't just need a cheerleader. Like there needs to be like evidence and science to support the things that we're saying. And like the mindset comes down to like relationship with food and relationship with yourself and the scale. And like a lot of times those are our biggest hurdles or the things that take longer. Because I'll have clients checking their boxes and doing the right thing, but they're so attached to the scale, and they're like, well, the scale went up 1 pound. And I'm like, you just said in your check-in, you slept longer than you've ever slept. You didn't wake up once, that you felt less irritable with your kids, that you felt were so present this weekend and so productive. And now the world is crumbling because the scale went up 1 pound. You're not ready, right? So like, it's so individual on like what that thing is, like what that hurdle is that we have to jump. And it's the same thing. That could be like a couple of weeks shift. Like sometimes clients do make the connection of like, wow, I'm eating more food and not gaining. And I'm like, cool, they were making progress. And other clients, that takes like way longer for them to make that connection. So I feel like we just, and obviously when a client comes to us, they're paying for a service, right? Like I understand it's an investment, but you really can't set a timeline on it because we don't know. I can make my best guess. I can give you, and if everything goes perfectly aligned timeline, but odds are it's going to be longer than whatever I tell you. So like, just go in knowing that, right? That like, it's a process. Obviously having a coach can exponentially speed up that timeline of like point A to point B. But really nobody knows
No.
You don't even know, right? Nobody knows.
No. And I think like compliance is a consideration that people don't take into account. It's like, okay, well, what happens after 6 months? Well, we'll have to, let's get to 6 months and then like, let's have a conversation and see like, where are we at? You know, that's something I do before my one-on-one clients resign. We have a call like, okay, this is where we started. This is where we're at. We still have to get to here. And I have some clients who are 2 to 3 years in. I've had a client, gosh, I think we're hitting 3.5 years. And I just really think she just loves the accountability. She just really loves to have somebody there to guide her, whether she's doing all the right things or none of the right things or all the things in between. She's just like, man, I just really like knowing that you're here is just helpful. Then I have clients who stay for a year and they're like, okay, I've learned enough. See you later. Whether or not they're done or that they reach their goal is kind of up to them, whether or not they stay or they don't stay. But even with this client that I signed last week or 2 weeks ago, you know, that first week we're just really like, I'm getting to know her. She's getting to know me. It's like, okay, we're just, I don't know her from anywhere besides where she found me from. Right. And then even this last week, you know, and she did her very first check-in with me and she was like, yeah, I need to be a little bit more honest this week in my process of logging my food, because there were definitely some times that I was a little nervous to log what I was actually eating because that's just how I am, right? That's a hurdle. That's a hurdle that somebody's going to have to kind of break through, of the fact that coaches aren't here to judge you. We're here to help you. And the more information that you give us, the more that we can help, the faster that we can even get you to where you want to go. Because then we're able to help and guide and shift and adjust if necessary, or just say, hey, it's okay. We're just going to keep going. And not to get discouraged by it. So, you know, for her, it was just like having this awareness moment of like, yeah, I definitely didn't go on I had some sweet treats that I didn't log because I was a little like embarrassed. And I was like, hey, it's okay. Like that's normal. And you know, that's part of the process. So it's like the compliance element is like you're only going to get as far as you are honest about where you're at, actually.
Yeah, no, truly. And, you know, clients are always like, well, I'm afraid to disappoint or I don't want to, you know, screw it up, or I'll check in next week. I had a bad week. And I'm like, no, I'll give you permission to skip check-in when you were perfect and everything went well and,
right.
And you needed no assistance or support or anything with any of the stuff that you did. I tell clients the most important weeks to check in are the ones who are like, I fucked up. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what happened. I'm off the rails, whatever. I use this client as an example a lot. You know, she came to us obviously wanting to change her physique, but she camped a lot. She camped a lot with like a bunch of other couples. That was like their thing that they did on weekends. And that came with a lot of drinking and s'mores and snacks. And that was a good like 6-month process. And I commend her so much in her self-awareness because she tracked everything. It could be 3,200 calories and she tracked it all. She never had any shame in that, but she would check in and say, I'm not willing to give this thing up, but I can make this change. I'm like, great, I can work with that. I have clients that come to me and say, I'm not willing to quit smoking yet. Great, I'm not going to touch that rock. Well, let's do everything else, right? So she would check in, and over time, her camping weekends looked so different than they did in the beginning because she was like, oh, I actually don't have to go drink with everyone else. I actually don't have to eat what everyone else is eating. I can control my choices and bring healthier options. And, you know, I think I posted her on my Instagram story yesterday, but, you know, I made a post about how Quitter's Day is January 10th. And that's the day that everyone quits on their New Year's resolutions. And I made a poll of like, who has quit? Who hasn't started yet? And she responded and said, well, I guess I technically haven't started because I've been doing this for 2 years and you guys helped. And, you know, she was messaging me last week about, hey, I'm in my deficit again. Is this okay? And like, I'm like, what more could you ask for from a client, right? So much self-awareness. She spent 2 years with us. She's not perfect. She didn't reach her goal, but she knows what she needs to do now to continue. And that's really cool to see, right? But that self-awareness and that open communication, you can maximize your coaching experience like 100x if you openly communicate and are vulnerable and actually use check-ins to reflect on your shit. What did I do well? What did I not do? And even if you don't have a coach, have a touch point with yourself where you're reflecting, did I make healthy choices? Is there something I could do differently? And she would check in from camping and say, I made these choices. What could I work on next? And I'm like, okay, like the most perfect client ever, right? Like that's really how you do it, whether it's with a coach or with yourself, is like have some self-awareness there too.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference between somebody who's just looking to lose weight and somebody who's looking to change their life. Because it's not the same. If you come to me and you're just looking to lose weight, I ain't the coach for you. Like, don't stop here. We're going to get you to lose weight if that's kind of, again, that's a side effect. But like outside of that, if you're just here for the weight loss and that scale doesn't go down and you can't get over that, we're going to have a big problem. And I don't mind helping a client figure that piece out. If that's something they're like, the scale always stumps me. I got to work on the scale. The scale's always going to be a hiccup for me. Cool. We can work through that. But also, again, being aware that, man, every time that scale, goes up, I have a panic attack. Okay. So how do we mitigate that for you? And how do we work through that? It's key. So,
you got to communicate. And that's the point of a coach. The point of a coach isn't that you are perfect at every check-in. You should check in and say, I fucked up, or this isn't working, or this feels hard. That is literally the point of growing and evolving as a human. It's like, what is hard for me and how do I get better at it? There's not certain humans that wake up perfect and everything's easy and great. It's people that are willing to fail and reflect and be curious about what's not working and just use this stuff as data to be better versus melt down at every turn of things that aren't perfect and we have this expectation. And I think that's the difference in like who's successful and who's not, right? And actually making that change. And it's okay if it's a longer timeline. Everyone's different and everyone has different shit. And I don't believe everyone has the same 24 hours. Some of us genuinely are busier than others, but you still have to use your time effectively in the way that works for you.
And it doesn't mean that just because you are busier than some that you can't change, that your inability is bigger or anything else. It just might take you longer or it might look a little bit different. And I think that's going back to that, like the social media thing and getting all this influx of information and Susie on IG telling us what we have to do or don't do or this do or that do. It's like, whoa. And having a coach there to say, hey, let's cut out all that noise and you just focus on this thing that we're focusing on. And that's all you need to worry about,
Yeah. I tell people, even when you consume my content, be mindful. Does this apply to me right now? If it doesn't, don't use it. Ignore it. Don't like it. Unfollow me. I don't care. Not every piece of information that you consume is something that is immediately applicable for you. They could be at a totally different point in the process. But of course, if we said in every post all day, every day to eat protein, sleep and work out and lift weights, and people would be like, oh, this is boring, right? So I always say I'm sharing where I'm at in my journey, but if this doesn't apply to you, ignore, don't.
Yeah, that's
put it in your pocket for later.
Yeah, you can always go back to it when it does apply. Like, oh man, that's a great piece of information I can hold on to for when I need it, for when it is applicable. And even with our businesses, how many times do we see business coaches that are like post this thing like low ticket, high ticket, this ticket, that. Oh, do this, post 17 times a day. Oh, do the things. It's like, does that apply to me? I don't really know right now.
Yeah. I mean, I wasted a lot of money on that thinking I need to do this because that's what everyone was saying. And you have to be able to differentiate, like, is this for me or is this not? And that takes a lot of responsibility actually on social media for how you consume that information. And even if it does apply to you, research it. Is that something you want to do? Is that something that you actually believe in and align with? I think that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we can go for how you consume information on social media. Yeah, that's like the moral of the story is to consume responsibly.
Yeah, consume responsibly, just like everything else.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, that's actually a great theme for all of this.
It is. So is there anything that we didn't touch on? I think I hit everything in my notes that I took. Anything you want to add or close out with or just wrap it up?
No, I mean, I think that you're the way that we coach and share information and approach health is so similar in that don't overcomplicate it, especially with like New Year's resolutions and things. It really is simple and you don't have to suffer and it doesn't have to suck. Use the data, be curious, reflect, own your shit, have some self-awareness and stop looking for a shortcut and things will feel so much easier, and it'll feel so much more fun and relaxing and less pressure and less stressful.
Yeah.
That was my journey to health in the last 10 years, summed up in, what was that, 40 minutes?
Yep.
But to speed up that timeline, I think those are the best things that you can do, is to fuel your body and get away from the carrots dangled in our faces and the shiny object syndrome of the next diet and the next thing and the GLP-1s and all of these other things. Like, does this apply to you, and is that the best choice for you right now? And only you can really decide that, but keep it simple. It really doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah, I think I think you just said something that like is really powerful, which is like doing these things is what's going to actually speed up the timeline versus doing this and doing that. And then you're wasting time. You're spending time doing things that don't help you get you where you want to go, but you feel like you're doing something. That's a great dopamine hit, but that doesn't get you where you want to go. So it's like, speed up your timeline by just sticking to basic shit that applies to you. And that's all you can do.
Yeah, I love it.
I love that. Well, thank you, you guys. You can find Jillian. All of her links are in the show notes. You can, she has a podcast, so go binge the shit out of it. So like all of her links are in the show notes. You guys go follow her on Instagram. She is a world and wealth of information. And again, if it applies to you, then take that information and do something with it. If it doesn't apply to you, it's okay. She still is going to put out great content, and someday it might be applicable, and you might be like, oh yeah, there's that Jillian girl that I should probably go talk to that can actually help me with this thing that I'm struggling with. Because again, I'm very much scope of practice. So if it doesn't align with where I am able to coach, I'm going to refer. So just keep in mind that part too. But thank you. I really appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited. All right, ladies, if you got some great information from this podcast, please don't forget to screenshot, share, and tag both of us in that on your socials so that we can get out there. And I will catch you ladies on the next episode. Don't forget to stay basic.